Right, 6 o'clock. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Waste Disposal Task and Finish Group. So, you're reminded to all please wear a face mask until seated, remain a sensible social distance when moving around the chamber, and use the hand sanitizer provided. An induction loop is now operative. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. Reporting officers using Teams. Have we got anyone on Teams? Okay, lovely. So reporting officers using Teams, please switch cameras and microphones on when speaking and off when finished, and use the hands up icon in Teams to indicate questions and comments. This meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. And please put mobile phones on silent or turn them off. Lovely, and we are moving on to apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Young has submitted his apologies.
Okay. And we have the minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the minutes? Yeah. Come on, Councillor Franks.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Oh, you're happy?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So happy for me to sign off the minutes. That's fine. So have we got any disclosures of interest?
None, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And urgent business. I've got no urgent business.
No urgent business, Chair.
Perfect. So references from committees and other bodies. We've got no references.
None, Chair.
Yep. Okay, and we're on to report. So over to Sean.
Thank you, Chair. The report before you is got the responses to the questions raised on the 30th of June, plus a number of appendices which we hope answer some of the queries and provides some further evidence for the group. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think it's probably the simplest way to do it.
Councillor Franks.
Yeah, forgive me, it's a mixture of questions and comments, really. First of all, thank you for the comparisons between various models of delivering the service. I think that's quite helpful. Personally, I'm not terribly impressed with some of the more complicated ones. But what would, I think, be helpful would be some financial appraisal of the difference between in-house and contracted out. I guess that is principally around terms and conditions of employees, particularly the very expensive local government pension scheme, which provides an excellent fallback for staff, and I'm not by any means suggesting that should be changed, altered or watered down, but most employers offer something a good deal less, and I guess that's one of the key areas of difference. But some sort of guesstimates, if you like, of the differences in cost would I think be helpful. Another thing that would help me would be, I don't know how to describe this. I'm thinking of a sort of easy to use comparison between landfill, incineration, anaerobic digestion on cost, availability, practicality, and environmental effects. And I've also come across something I hadn't heard of before, which is anaerobic microbes. My colleague Lee has more technical knowledge on these matters than I have, seems to think it might be interchangeable with anaerobic digestion. but it'd be interesting to know whether that is the same. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that I think it's time we put together a small group to start coming up with some conclusions. That group, I would suggest, should not be all of us here, but maybe 3 people, including the chair, obviously. And it will need support, without any doubt at all, from either or the 2 officers who've led us through all of this, that's Steve and Sean. And obviously from Democratic Services, Angela, there will need to be support as well, as we're going to be drawing. I don't know whether it's going to be you or Eunice or whatever, but there will need to be clerks, if you like, because you're going to be needing to take notes and help us draw up the document. My suggestion is, as far as possible, to ease the Democratic Services guys' load. It would be better if it were people who could at least sometimes be available during the day. I don't actually know, Chair, what your availability is like during the day, but I could certainly put forward 2 people, David Wynne and myself, from our side of things, if you think it's the right time to start doing it, which I really do.
Normally, with task and finish groups, once you've received all the evidence that, and you're satisfied that you've received everything that you need to start drawing conclusions, because this particular TNF needs to finish by October. The next meeting, if, say for instance, this meeting here, you've got all the evidence that you need. You don't need officers to go away and bring anything more for you to discuss and deliberate. So what we would do at the next meeting, we would bring all the evidence that you have had, and you would look at all the evidence, and then you would try to draw conclusions from that meeting. At that meeting, we don't normally have a separate cohort of members outside of the TNF that do that bit of deliberating. It's normally the whole TNF that does that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that, Angela. That is very helpful. My concern is that I think we're running out of time. That's the problem. I could remind me what the date of the next meeting is. I know it's probably in here somewhere. Yeah, my problem then is, if you leave it until then, you're probably going to end up doing it without me being involved. And I'm sure you're perfectly capable of. The world won't stop going around if I'm not here, but I'm away for most of September, subject to COVID, EasyJet, and all the other uncertainties of travel at the moment. So I am concerned that we're going to run out of time. And we do have enough to make some progress on some of the areas. We don't have everything sewn up, which is why I've asked for a bit more this evening. But we certainly have enough to make some progress on some issues.
So the next meeting is 30th of August. Would we be in a position to start discussing the report at the next meeting?
It depends. The information that you've just the extra information from officers, if they could bring that to the next meeting, And as long as we pull all together the other information that you've had, you could start to draw conclusions and recommendations at that meeting. And then the final meeting in September, you could bring the draft report for you to agree to go on to OSB.
Well, yeah, that's fine, provided you can do it without me, because I won't be here for most of September.
But you'd be here for the 30th of August too. Okay. That's fine. I think that sounds sensible.
What date in August is that meeting?
30th.
30th. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Would you be back by the 5th of October, Councillor Franks? Okay.
Councillor Franks, that doesn't
clarified then in that case, if we're into October, when do we require the report to be completed?
the last meeting, the October meeting, would be the draft report coming for you to agree to go on to OSB. They would need to go to that 5th of October meeting.
Yes. So at the next meeting, we'd have to be drawing our conclusions to for the report to go to the 5th of October.
I'm afraid that sounds to me as though that route will end up in any report from this committee being late. I think we would end up with an agreed report being late in that case from this committee, because I don't think that those meetings are going to get us to where we need to be.
We definitely have to conclude this in October. Is that correct, officers?
Yes, because that's when we'll start to be going through the process of reporting to the executive for the procurement, and everything will be public. If I could say, Chair, in terms of the additional questions, we can provide the technical, easy to use cost and availability and practicalities on landfill as a direct email out, because it'll almost be some sort of spreadsheet or otherwise. The financial options for the operations, we're currently going through that with finance. Probably going to end up getting a third party to do the modelling, just because of sort of, as Councillor Franks has said, things like pensions are the key things. But we're hoping to get that done fairly promptly. We just have to follow good governance and good procurement. And as far as the aerobic microbes, there is a commentary about technology on page 11, which was enzyme mix. It was that asked at the last meeting, so that's the update from the facility which is in Northwich. So again, that's got a link, but we can provide the technical on the disposal options probably in two or 3 weeks maximum. The finance is, say, we're working on that, so there's quite a bit of information we'll have in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and if it suits the chair, and we can always meet for an hour and just to go through that with the group informally, if it would help progress the report. It's, officers can meet you during the day or early evening, whichever suits really.
That really is helpful, Sean. Thank you. If the stuff could be emailed out to us, that gives us a chance. And if I could suggest then, if any member, having seen the information, feels they need a face-to-face meeting for further briefings, then they should say so to the chair and to Angela Fraser. Otherwise, we'll assume that the information has been digested and understood. But it does give us a chance to come to the August meeting with some ideas. Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Go ahead.
Sue Frost's got a question.
Can we bring in Sue?
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Sue.
Yes, thank you. I was just listening to the conversation there, discussion around timescales. And Sean's quite right. We are looking at getting some financial support, mainly because our own financial support is very stretched at the moment. So we're having to look externally. I am a bit concerned that we won't have, we will probably have some very high level information on financial comparisons between the different sort of options, but particularly this is around the insourcing option, which I think was mentioned as one of the comparisons. That's a lot more complicated, as you already pointed out, with regard to local government pensions and things like that. So I'm a bit concerned that this information isn't going to be as quick as members hope. The other thing I was just going to mention as well is that we are reporting to executive, and Sean can clarify the date for that. So we'll be reporting to executive, is it the end of October, Sean, to bring all this information to executive? So you'd want some of that anyway in advance of executive, so that you can pull your report together, I presume. I just want to get some clarity around the timescales, really.
If I could add to that, there's 2 executives that we're sort of aiming for. One's on the 10th of October and one's on the 7th of November. That's the 2 ones, depending on what the leader and other businesses that we're aiming for.
Could I? I think it's more complicated than that, isn't it? Because clearly, on the key question of taking the service in-house or going for a new external contractor is bound, I would guess, to go to a joint board meeting at some stage before it goes to executive, and maybe to a Labour policy group. So I think what I'm saying is that whatever financial information we can have and can understand and can debate will give rise to more questions, and I'm sure the same questions will arise at a joint board or Labour policy group meeting. So I'm not sure where this is going, except to say that you're almost certainly going to have to allow for at least one joint board and policy group meeting, although you may get away with just a joint board. I mean, that's for Hazel and the team to decide, obviously. But it's just seeming to me that on November date seems a bit more realistic than the October one. That's all.
Just come back and just sort of say that there's no longer any joint board meetings. No. So we don't have joint boards anymore.
Well, thank you. I didn't know that. Yeah, okay. I'll make no comment on that.
Could I just come back in, Chair, if I may? Thank you. I agree with David Franks that I think, given that the Task and Finish group need to really put their report forward before executive, you know, to allow executive to consider that as well, I would imagine. Probably we would be looking at November, but that would be the absolute latest, because obviously now we are on a critical path in terms of the contract, which you know, is now sort of getting a bit closer than we would like at the moment, but there's quite a lot of work to do on it still. So yes, I think it is probably more realistic if it were November, which would then give the task and finish group time to sort of put their report forward for it to be considered. We would of course be going, I would imagine, to OSB as well, and I don't know how you want to factor that in. Some members are obviously on OSB as well.
Yeah, apologies from me. I'd forgotten that it probably will have to go. It certainly have to go somewhere in scrutiny, won't it? Yeah, and it would probably be helpful if it could go to scrutiny after this group has come up with some conclusions. Although, frankly, from the evidence we've seen, I don't think we're likely to come up with anything massively radical. But nevertheless, it would be more helpful for scrutiny, for executive, and indeed for a Labour policy group, if there was one, you know, if our conclusions were available.
Yes, Angela confirms it would normally go back to OSB before. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
It'd just be good to know where we're leaving ourselves.
Yes.
As I understand it, Sean and Steve are going to get this information out to us by email as soon as they have it available. We're going to digest it and talk to you, Chair, and Angela, if we really feel a face-to-face meeting is required. And the whole objective is to come to the August meeting with some ideas of where we want to take it.
That's what I had taken from this discussion. We're going to start drawing up ideas at the next meeting, which is on the 30th of August. Do we feel like would we then from that date decide if we need an additional September meeting? Yeah. Okay. So we'll start drawing up ideas at the meeting on the 30th of August, and at that point we will decide whether we need an additional meeting to work on the report before we agree a draft at the last meeting on the 5th of October. Right? Okay. I think we're all.
So just to be clear, so at the August meeting, you want us to pull together all the evidence that you've had so far.
Yeah.
And that will also include the bit of information that you're going to be circulating to members on costs, what they've asked today.
Yeah.
And then from that, the August meeting, you will look at all the evidence and then try to draw conclusions from that one.
Yeah.
And then we'll bring the draft final report to the October meeting.
Yes.
But in the meantime, after August, if you feel that you need a meeting in September, we'll look at a date for the September meeting.
Yes.
Before we bring the final report.
That's what we were all suggesting. Yes. Okay. Is everyone happy with Councillor Wynne?
Just one comment. Yes, I agree in principle with what's being said, but given availability of people and so on, can we fix a tentative date for that additional meeting now? Because I wouldn't like to think that we get further and further towards that September date and then have difficulty setting anything up. So I'd like to see a provisional date set earlier, not later.
Do you want to check now?
I think that's what Councillor Wynne is asking.
Do you want me to check now, or do you want me to go away and have a look at some dates and then circulate to members some provisional dates that you could possibly be looking
I
at?
think it's probably better that you go away and you have a proper look at the diary and really think it through, because if we try and come up with something today, all likelihood, one way or another, it'll get complicated.
Yeah.
I'd rather you went away and looked at it properly and then came back with some suggested dates, please.
Will do.
Okay. Do we have anything further to discuss this meeting? I'm not sure we do. Councillor Mead.
Questions on some of these different service development options. While we're here, that we'll throw one or two at here.
Lovely. Go ahead.
The in-house DSO model. It says here, experience. Does the council have sufficient and appropriate operational management knowledge and experience? Have we?
In quite a lot of the aspects of running an in-house, no, because we don't have that breadth of experience for, say, health and safety, whereas it's a very different when you're running what is almost a factory. Along the line, also haulage. There's quite a significant amount of haulage involved, and major plant operations. We've got the experience with our fleet services and maintaining equipment. And then there is some technical qualifications which we would need to have. And along the lines of whether we want to be quality assured in our operations, ISO 14001, which is quite common, and for the materials and how you would then operate the disposal contracts, the add-on contracts. At the moment, we have what's called a unitary contract, where all of those services are part of the price, from comms right through to HR, through to maintenance, plant maintenance. So we would have to, if we didn't have those in the council, we'd have to acquire them, and we would look at particular things like planning. We'd have to submit planning applications on our own behalf to the council and the Environment Agency for environmental permits. Again, they're all the things a contractor does as part of that service provision. So that's where that comment really is, because the staff directly involved with a contract would normally be across, but that wouldn't be any of the support services. So I think the cut-off is 70% of their time has to be spent on the contract. So typically maintenance isn't, 70% they're spread across. So, and then we would have to take on things like the weighbridge and various other requirements.
Right, thank you for that. I've got another one on the local authority trading company. It's got there the LATCS's O's role is an operational service provider and will require recruitment of experienced managerial and supervisory team with the specific skills and experience set. What sort of cost would that be to the council to employ a whole new team, or would it just be a matter of changing job descriptions on people's doors?
As I say, normally the staff involved with the contract would transfer across under TUPE, but a TECL model is slightly different in that you're not a local authority that's transferred into. So it's a local authority trading company. So they can operate slightly differently as far as pensions, bonuses, and the like. So you have to import or buy in all of those services, the financial services, the HR services, because they are not strictly part of the council. They are an outside company, so you have to bring in all those resources. That's assuming that people want to transfer in, the TUPE, because although you make an offer, people can still say no. So that's the risk you take with any of those type of changes. So.
Sounds expensive already.
There are a number of TECLs. I mean, there's some in Kent, quite a large one in Norfolk called Norse. So it's a well-trodden model for various operations. It's just the waste management market is quite labour intensive and capital intensive. And of course, you saw from the EFW that they are large facilities and lots of contracts that go with them, because you have to dispose of everything you receive in your given area. So whether it be waste or recycling or glass or whatever.
Thank you.
That's
That's all, Joe.
Councillor Franks.
Can I just comment on that? Because I think it's important we bear in mind, if you set up a company to do it, it depends very much on how you deal with the company. The companies that the council has set up so far, the airport company and the housing one, are not employers. All of their employee services are supplied by the council and then invoiced back. So it may be that things like HR and all the rest of it could be absorbed by the existing services, although with the increase in numbers, there may need to be some expansion there. All I'm saying is it depends on how you want the company to operate. If you want it to operate at a completely independent level, then yes, it would have to recruit all these people or buy them from somewhere. If you want it to work in the same way the airport and housing companies operate, then you would be looking at a smaller investment, because it would involve simply expanding services that the council already has.
Any other comments?
If I could just add, for the outsource, in-source and TECL models, the main difference is effectively with the in-source and the TECL, things like transport, investment in your facility and plant is wholly down to yourself. Whereas the outsourcing, effectively, you can build whatever model you want to include capital or otherwise, but they have to bring enough to the contract to operate it in the same safe, sustainable manner to meet the contract conditions. So that's sort of the difference up front, and especially with transport, there's a sort of 15 articulated vehicles leave Kingsway every day, taking recycling and waste. So it's a significant operation. Yeah.
But Sean, you're going to give us some more financial information on this.
Yeah, as the group's asked, we'll provide that some information at high level on the various options.
Yeah,
that's primarily to do with the staffing
yes,
side of it.
Just
There's a
picking up
large
on that.
proportion of the annual contract is on just natural disposal, as opposed to the sort of people and
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Right. Do we have any further questions or comments? No. Okay. I think is that all of the business of the meeting then? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. And I look forward to hearing some more information from yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you all on the 30th of August. We can start drawing up some conclusions.